Perfect. Okay, thank you again, everyone, for joining today for the engineering student panel. Just to get started, so we've got a few engineering students here who we're going to introduce shortly. After that, we're going to go over some common questions about their programs, their experiences at Lassonde, and just what life as an engineer is like in general. And then we're also going to be taking questions from you in the audience. So if you're curious or you are wondering about anything in general about Lassonde or engineering specific, please put them in the chat and we'll be more than happy to answer them. Now, we'll start off with some introductions. My name is Dennis. I am an upper year computer science student, and I'll be your host. More importantly, we are joined by a wonderful lineup of engineering students. So we've got Ethan, who's in civil engineering, Chandon, who's in computer engineering, Kajani, who's in electrical engineering, Rehan, who's in mechanical, Mitchell, who's in software, and last but not least, Ian, who is in space engineering. So now we're going to go over some common questions that we usually get in these sessions. And then I'll check into the chat or preferably the Q&A if anybody has any questions, and we'll take those. And if not, we'll just continue going over some common questions. Now, first things first, I think I'll go to Rehan, but I will ask all of you this question since it is a pretty common one. Now, I want all of you to kind of think back to when you were in grade 12 and you were trying to decide a major. Now, I'm curious, what made you decide engineering? And I'm curious, like, did you know the stream that you wanted to go into originally, or did you just know you wanted to be an engineer? Rehan, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so my experience was a bit unique. So I wanted to work in the space industry. So initially I was applying to the astrophysics program at York University. However, after doing a bit more research, I realized that, to be an astrophysicist, I'd have to have a PhD as well as, that being a very niche field. So then I learned more about engineering and then, how a mechanical engineering degree, for example, is like a jack of all trades in that it's applicable in so many different fields: biomedical, nuclear, aerospace, chemical, etc. And that really struck to me, and that's how I had my heart set on mechanical engineering. And for Lausanne School of Engineering, I attended an open house similar to how it's presented here, where I spoke to different individuals at the school, and they told me about how Lausanne students have the ability to forge their own path with their courses, as well as create that difference in that in the new emerging engineering school, and more of the big fish in a small pond kind of big fish in a small pond kind of scenario.
I think you're muted, Dennis.
Thank you. Yeah, I just got the notification. Thanks. Okay, cool. Thanks, Rehan. Chandan, do you want to go next?
Yeah, when I was in my grade 12, I used to basically work with different microcontrollers, right? Like Arduino, Raspberry Pi. So I used to program them and, just perform different tasks. So that was something I was passionate about back then. So then I researched and I got to know that computer engineering is the basically stream which basically most resembles with the working with programming, working with hardware. So basically, then I chose computer engineering. Apart from that, I was already I used to be passionate about computers back then. I used to broke into the CPI and CPU and look into different parts of different computers and look at oh, this is the memory, oh, this is the ALU and stuff like that. So that is something which made me choose computer engineering back then in high school when I came to uni.
Nice, thanks. Kajni, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So, for me, I grew up enjoying doing a lot of hands-on activities. And so when I went to like high school, I did a few classes, tech classes where we built circuits, and I think we did like a Knight Rider circuit, a lot of cool things like that. And that sort of influenced my decision to go into engineering, specifically electrical engineering. Yeah.
Sounds pretty cool. Thanks, Kajni. Ethan, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I can go. So when I was in grade 12, I started having a larger interest for, I guess, math and numbers. I was actually considering between finance and engineering, but as the time came closer and I had to choose for programs, I started realizing that I always had a large curiosity for wondering how things worked, how they were made, especially in the construction industry. So eventually it just became very clear that I had to use math and physics to pursue a career and find something that I'm gonna enjoy for the rest of my life.
Some good advice there as well. Good thing to keep in mind when you're choosing a program. Mitchell, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I started getting into programming in around grade 10, 11. I took some introductory CS or programming courses, in mostly game design and a bit of Java. And that's kind of what got me interested in programming in general. So then when it was time for me to start deciding in grade 12 what I wanted to go into, it kind of seemed like an obvious choice between computer science and software engineering. So I was kind of battling with those two choices. And I ended up going with software engineering because it seemed to be the best for me at the moment or at the time. And that's kind of what I'm currently doing now. Trying to like improve as a programmer and hopefully get a job working in my field. But yeah.
Okay, nice. Thanks, Mitchell. And last but not least, Ian.
So ever since I was little, I liked the idea of designing things, and I found the space engineering program out of pure luck at the Ontario University's fair in my grade 11 year. And well, I mean, the rest is kind of just history because I really liked space as well. You know, just a focus on stars, on planetary formation, something that I really enjoyed since I was very little. I find space engineering and it's just the perfect program.
Nice. And so now I have a follow-up question for all of you, because I know we talked about what we thought our programs would be when we started. But I know all of you are upper year students and some of you are even graduating. So I'm kind of curious, what has your program actually been like? So Ian, like, are you truly, looking at the stars and firing things into space all the time, or has it been a little different than what you expected?
So of course we're not looking at, it's a space engineering program, so we're not just looking at the stars and doing astronomy. But I have had the chance to do a lot of that. And then we got the chance to work on a Cube satellite project, which is a small satellite about 30 centimeters by 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. And it was just wonderful to go down to Florida and watch that launch. So that was something I actually hadn't expected to be doing, but that I got to do and was really good.
Nice. That sounds really exciting. Thanks for sharing that, Ian. Yeah, it's cool when you actually get to do some hands-on stuff and you get to do the things you've seen other people do. Mitchell, what has software engineering been like overall? Are you coding every day, or is it really not as intense as it sounds?
To be honest, I wasn't sure about my expectations going into the program, but there's a lot more math and physics, especially in your first and second year. And I haven't done too much specialized coding or programming in general. Some of my classes require, like I have some like Java courses that I have to take, one course in C. But there's been a lot of just like basic fundamentals in the first and second year. So in my third year, I think things will be more interesting. Third and fourth year, you get to do more coding and programming in general. But yeah, that's mostly it.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, definitely. I feel like in any type of computer software engineering related thing, there's always some theory involved. You can't just be coding and applying the stuff you do every day. And Chandan, as a computer engineer, is it the same story with you?
Yeah, you could say that, like back then when I was applying to university for computer engineering degree, I used to think that basically there will be some programming courses and some simple like maths and physics courses. But what was truly uh and what other thing which I didn't expected was that there were like engineering science courses. Like you could think of like basically they teach you how does an engineering think, some basic engineering courses to think about like, oh, if an engineer encounters this problem, like how an engineering makes different assumptions, how basically an engineer breaks a bigger problem into small goals and how they basically figure out problems on their own. First and second year were mostly like doing some basic physics and maths courses and then some programming fundamentals. And then in third and fourth year, things got really interesting because most of the courses are related to hardware. and programming as well. And in computer engineering itself, you get to choose like 4 electrical engineering electives as well. So that is something which can basically broaden your learning perspective and basically can broaden your job applying roles as well. So yeah.
Okay, nice. Good to know. Kajani is an electrical engineer. Are you dealing with signals and systems and sending Morse code to your friends all the time?
So I'm not sending Morse code, but originally I thought the program was a lot of circuitry. That's what I assumed when I first came into the program, but it's a lot more than that. So we ended up doing like a lot of programming, a lot of signals analysis, like power courses, and like just like there's a lot of streams in electrical engineering that you sort of learn about more in your upper years. When you first start off, you're doing more general courses like programming, math, science, things like that. But then once you get to your third and fourth year, you choose different electives that you can choose for like the different streams and really explore what is out there in electrical engineering.
Thanks. Ethan, as a civil engineer, are you building concrete and like crushing it all the time?
We are, yeah, actually.
Nice.
You do that in second year and third year. In second year, you get to do it in a smaller scale with just like little cylinders. In third year, you'll actually get to design an actual rebar cage with fitting it inside a beam, and then you get to crush it in one of the labs in the Bergeron Center at York. And then you get to take all the data and basically see if you did everything right. And it basically makes you feel like you're a real engineer because you're testing something that would have actually had to hold up in a real life scenario. I would say though that when I started the program, I definitely realized that it's a lot more broad than what I thought it was. The first thing I thought when I was grade 12 was straight civil is just structural. But as the time went on, start learning more about transportation and how important it is for traffic flow and congestion and street lights and that type of infrastructure. You start learning about the ground, what's in the ground, what can hold up against certain types of buildings, foundations, also even water, the type of the clean water we drink, sanitizing it, making sure it's going to be reusable and safe for all the households. So it was definitely great to realize that I had way more options than I first thought.
Nice. Yeah, that's always great to hear. And if anybody's interested in seeing the civil engineering lab, we do have weekly Wednesday and Friday tours that actually take you there. Just pointing that out. Last but not least, Rehan, as a mechanical engineer, is it all about building rovers and various mechanical devices?
Yeah, so for the mechanical engineering curriculum, I find that it's really well balanced between theoretical coursework as well as hands-on projects, especially leaning towards the abundance of hands-on projects. And I found that the curriculum is really split into different streams. So if you're interested in, let's say, design and manufacturing, thermofluids, biomedical engineering, we have different courses for each of these, as well as specializations in your fourth year. So that's really cool about the program as well. And just to add on to the projects-based question, so in your second and third year, even your fourth as well, you have a lot of these different projects that use different design softwares as well as different programming control software. So that's really great experience to add on your resume as well if you're a mechanical engineering student.
Cool, nice. Thanks for sharing that, Rehan. I know we started talking a little bit about some of the labs you've all had, and just some of like the more hands-on stuff. So I do want to ask, what is the most kind of coolest thing that you kind of brag and show off to people? I know some of you have already talked about it a little bit, so here's your time to go more in depth and show off even more. It's recorded too, so you can play it back and watch it and kind of bask in the glory. Chandan, I guess I'll let you go first. I can see you're smiling. I know you're excited.
Yeah, sure. So it was in my second year. So, like I was taking a course, computer organization. And in that course, we were basically learning about different computer languages, like assembly languages, and then, like talking more about how the computer architecture works. And, we had some basic Verilog as well. So in that part of the course, there were one of the labs in which you have to work and build your own CPU using Verilog to perform a multiplication operation. So that was like, I could say, like one of the coolest experience, because I remember like it gives you hands-on learning, plus it gives you an idea on how to basically figure out things on your own. I remember like there were some of the tasks in which I was having trouble in, and then I tried to research and then got around with those tasks and I was able to complete the lab. But I would say like that has been kind of like a highlight for me to basically, like build a CPU using Verilog, which could perform a multiplication operation. So yeah, that was, I could say, like one of the coolest experience in that course for me.
Yeah, I've tried doing similar stuff and it's not easy. So
Yeah.
props to you for being able to do that. Mitchell is a software engineer. Do you have any similar stories or similar cool stories about interesting stuff you've done?
Yeah, I recently finished a course. It was a group project for the term, and we had to build an application in Java for a specific, like a customer. We had to actually find somebody who needed something, and we had to actually build it out for them. So it was really, I actually enjoyed the course, or enjoyed the app that we made. It was nice because I actually had a good team for my project, so I didn't get stuck with like a bunch of people doing nothing instead of having me to do everything. So that was nice. And it was just nice how quickly the app came together from start to finish. And we ended up coming up with that. It was like a pantry organizer. So you store your food information and you can get some like information about what you're storing in there. So that would be like a highlight or from one of my courses that I actually really enjoyed.
Nice. Yeah, it's cool when you start learning about basically different platforms, different applications, and then you go onto like an Amazon website or a Microsoft website, like a common thing you use all the time, and then you start to realize, oh, hey, wait a minute, I actually get how this part works. I learned it in class, and the pieces start to fit together, and you start to kind of see how you're growing from nothing to, wow, I can build this. Yeah, cool. Thanks, Mitchell. Ian, I know you talked about it a little bit, but please talk about it more, because every time you talk about it, it sounds very cool.
Sure. So in my first year, I joined something called the Essence CubeSat mission, which a CubeSat is essentially a small satellite made of commercial off-the-shelf components, mainly commercial off-the-shelf components. And with this CubeSat, it was already designed by the time I joined, but we got to build it, do assembly, integration, and testing. So build the satellite, make sure everything's working well together, and testing every individual component. And then we sent the satellite off to the Canadian Space Agency, who sent it to Florida, where we then got to go watch the launch of this satellite on the SpaceX Falcon 9, I believe. It was just a wonderful experience all in all, and I learned a whole lot. And as for people asking about co-op, I noticed that in the Q&A. I'll talk really quickly about mine. I worked in a space engineering lab, which is also a really great experience, and we're hoping to launch another satellite soon.
Nice, thanks, Ian. And thanks for talking about co-op. Yeah, after I think this round of questions, I think we're going to go into co-op a bit and people's personal experiences. Sorry, Le, I'm mixing up my Ians and my Ethans. Ethan, I know you talked about it a little bit. Do you want to share any kind of cool experiences you had in your program?
Yeah, so besides, I'd say building the concrete beam and then with the rebar cage inside and crushing it, and getting to see it crack on the way down slowly. In my second year, we actually got to, on a small scale, I guess, build a popsicle stick bridge, where we had to use the design principles of the class. And we only had so many components, just basic glue and popsicle sticks and toothpaste, actually. And we had to weigh it to find a strength to weight ratio. And by the end of it, we would find out that using basically what we learned, we were able to make almost a 400% strength to weight ratio popsicle stick bridge. Bridges that were, my bridge specifically weighed about 400 grams. It almost didn't register on a scale. I had to get a cooking scale because it weighed so little. but it was able to stack up with 50 pounds of weight. And then the person that had that best bridge in that course actually would get the opportunity to go work with the professor in one of his jobs for co-op in the summer. And you also were able to get entry into the bridge building competition in Vancouver with all the other universities.
Did you end up doing that, by the way? Just follow up.
I was gonna do it. Me and a couple other colleagues were talking about it. Unfortunately, well, it fell through because of my own personal issues at the time. But it would have been a great experience.
Yeah, there you go. And there's always the opportunity to do it later on in the future too. Okay, cool. Now I think I'll take a couple questions in the chat. There's a co-op question, so I think I'll ask it to Chandan, and then I'll see if Rayhan has anything to follow up with. There's a question about York Engineering Co-op. You know, what do you like about it? Is it the job board, the networking events? You know, what makes it good?
I think for the York Engineering Co-op, I think the job board is there, which basically they post about like different jobs, like the co-op jobs itself that are coming inside the market for like a particular term. And, like the networking events are a highlight because, like there are different companies coming in at York, like for example, AMD, RBC, TD, and many more companies like IBM also comes. And basically, like you could basically try to network with the recruiters through those events, and basically then you could like give your resumes, and once after that you could get their emails as well. Basically you could reach out to them, and basically they can help you get you an interview or get you hired. And apart from that, the co-op team itself is like really helpful, and like they support their students a lot. And apart from that, I think the first co-op that I did at TD, it was because of them, because basically they helped me to find a job, and I was able to land a co-op. And then after that, as the experience built, and I was able to apply at other companies and was able to go through. So yeah, it was a wonderful experience.
Nice, yeah, it's good to hear. Yeah, I mean, I know I'm not an engineering student, but I know there was a question in the chat asking about how co-op works, so I can briefly answer that. Effectively, at the end of your second year, you would have your first co-op term. But again, you can kind of rearrange it as you like. So the co-op team is pretty flexible. So personally, I had one co-op term for 4 months at the end of the summer of my second year. Then I went back to school during the fall. And then I had a 4-month co-op term in the winter with the same company. They invited me back, and then they extended it for 8 months over the summer. So you can kind of rearrange it how you like. Getting into the co-op program is pretty simple. I'd say in the fall semester, you apply to the co-op program. You just need to maintain a certain GPA. It's the same GPA you would need to stay in the engineering program. The engineers can talk about whether it's an easy or difficult GPA to maintain. But you get that GPA, and then once you're in the program, then you start applying to jobs and job searching in the winter. You go to your networking events, talk to the advisors, get their advice. And then you would have your first co-op term in the summer. Chandan, would you say that the GPA is kind of an easy one to maintain?
Yeah, I think it's an easy one. I think from 9.0, you need like an actual 5.0 GPA out of that 9. So I think that's easy to maintain. It's not that hard.
Yeah. And Ian, I saw you unmuted. Would you like to add
Yeah,
anything?
you mentioned it was in the fall semester. In the fall semester of your second year, not of your first year.
Oh, did I say
Uh,
first year? Okay.
You didn't say any year, but
Oh, oops. Thank you for
yes.
clarifying that.
And yeah, no, the 5.0 GPA is basically just showing up to class.
Yeah, there you go. So I don't think it's supposed to be, it's not meant to be competitive to try to, get like to try to weed students out or anything. It's more to make sure that you're, like Ian said, you're going to class, you're paying attention, you actually know what's going on. So if you don't have the 5.0 GPA, that means that you're maybe missing something in class and you can't really contribute to a classroom, or you can't really contribute to a company and you may need to retake courses. But on that note, I know we talked about co-op and going to the industry. That's one way of doing things. But Ian, I know you've done a lot of research. You want to talk a little bit about your research experience?
Sure, yeah. So as a co-op student, you have the option to, instead of doing a job in industry, do a job with a professor. And in the space environment, as a space engineering student, that tends to be very similar to what you'd be doing in industry because it's a lot of research and development in industry. But it's harder to get into it GPA wise. You do need a higher GPA to go into research, but it also gives you the opportunity to write research papers, for example, which which looks really good on almost any resume if you are looking for that kind of research and that kind of work in general.
Well, thanks, Ian. Kajni, Ethan, I don't know if either of you have done any research or co-ops in the past.
I have not. As I was talking earlier, the same reason why I didn't do the bridge competition was the same reason why I couldn't follow through a co-op. I'll talk briefly about it. I was involved in a car accident that's beginning of that semester. So basically the whole summer was basically just me recuperating after I completed that semester, just taking a break and coming back. But I have seen it. I've talked to a lot of people. They said it's very helpful for them. I know a lot of people that have gotten co-ops through York. And it's definitely not something that, like you said, that is hard to get into. It's definitely open to almost all students that want it.
Yeah, definitely. And just to follow up too, I would imagine you probably needed to take a break after your accident. Do you find that it was easy to kind of rearrange your courses or kind of, take your time coming back?
Well, when I came back, it was a mix of second and third year courses, because not everything is offered as soon as you want to take it. It wasn't bad. I just had to get used to being a student again, I guess, a little bit, because instead of having a 4-month break, I had an 8-month break. But I wouldn't say it was difficult at all. The visual schedule builder that you guys will use to build your courses makes it very simple to see and plan everything out. And yeah, I wouldn't say it was difficult. If a similar situation happened to you guys, I wouldn't be worried.
Okay. Thanks, Ethan. It's good to hear. Okay, now we'll take a break from taking questions in the chat. We'll delve more into the life of an engineer. So, Kajni, I was wondering, do you want to talk a little bit about what a day in the life of an engineer, an engineering student is like?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a commuter student. I commute from Mississauga to York every day. And so this consists of like me waking up at like 5 a.m. just to get a ride from my dad. But obviously, if you live closer, if you live on campus, that won't be a problem for you. And so what I end up doing is I get to campus and I have worked like a few on-campus jobs in the dean's office. So I would usually like start work shifts there. Um, and then after I go to my classes, labs are usually later in the day. So I would wait out through like the evenings to get to labs, do those labs, and usually just like study with peers in between classes. And that's pretty much it for me.
Cool, nice, thanks. Ethan, do you also want to talk a little bit about what your day is like as a civil engineering student? Is it a lot of Red Bull and coffee?
Actually, surprisingly, it's not that bad. I'd say well, you get first year, it might be a little bit of a shock. At least it was for me. Your schedule from high school to university, pretty much the same thing. You wake up, commute to school. You may do a lecture, you may have a tutorial, you may have a lab that starts first. It all depends on the course and how it's made up. Basically, I would complete everything that I had that day. If I had a break, I'd probably find a quiet space in probably the Burge, a little in one of the tables or cubbies there, have my lunch. If I had time to review something from an earlier class, I might take out my laptop or iPad and just review stuff from previous classes or classes coming forward in the day or even later on in the week. And then I would simply go home and continue on with the day if I had any personal responsibilities to continue with.
Yeah, nice, nice. Thanks for sharing, Ethan. It's good to hear that engineering is not just coffee, Red Bull, and a lack of sleep. Okay, I think there are a few software engineering questions in the chat. Software engineering and computer science. So Mitchell, now's our time to shine. So we're wondering about what the possible career paths are in software engineering and what courses you need to take to get to those career paths, I think. Or no, the courses you need. Okay, that's a two-part question. Sorry. What are the career paths in software engineering?
There's a lot within software engineering. Most commonly, I think a lot of people go into web development. So that's like making websites, web apps like Twitter, Google, Amazon even. Lots of people go into those things. There's a lot of stuff involving like cloud computing. So if you've ever heard of like Amazon AWS, any sort of cloud-based management systems you can go into. If you delve into cybersecurity or security in general, you can end up becoming a cybersecurity analyst or any sort of role that has to do with software security or computer security. You can end up going into those as well. AI is kind of big right now, so artificial intelligence or generative AI. You can end up going into some field that has to do with something like that. I'm not sure exactly with AI because I'm not too familiar, but that's a field you can go into.
Yeah.
Yeah, mobile app development, all those things.
Yeah, thanks, Mitchell. Chand, I know computer engineering is a fairly big overlap. Do you have anything to add on to that with computer and software engineering?
I would say like software engineering is like the career paths, like as Michelle said, it's pretty similar to that. But in computer engineering, there are like further additions into it, is that you could basically go into microcontroller industry as well, like where you are working with the hardware and writing a piece of code to work with the hardware to work in a specific piece of way. You could look into like a hardware engineer, then there's like a VLSI engineer coming up, and then apart from that, you could like the companies you could target when you are talking about hardware related jobs are like Intel, Qualcomm, AMD. These are like the main ones. Yeah.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, tech is really big overall, just in general. Effectively, any jobs or any positions would require some type of technical knowledge, even other programs outside of a tech, like in civil engineering, mechanical, space engineering. There's always some type of tech component. So it is pretty big and pretty popular right now, and there are many types of there are many kind of streams that you can go into, and you don't even need to be a computer software engineer to actually be able to code or program. Okay, now I know there's some other questions in the chat about course selection. Rayhan, did you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So the question was, how do course selections work? And do we have to select courses ourselves or choose a time for the subject? Would you be able to provide more information for us? So yeah, definitely. So your best friend in this course selection process, I'm going to paste in the chat, it's the program checklist. So in your first year, you would have the help of academic advisors at Lassonde to help you pick out the courses. And most of the times they'll have the timings set out for you. And it's your responsibility to, accommodate it to your schedule. So you can go to the registration module, which if you just Google York REM, REM, I'll just paste the link as well. This is where you can add and drop courses as well as transfer courses. And I would really recommend you learn more about the prerequisites for certain courses, because you don't want to be dropping a course that is the major prerequisite for most of your second year courses, such as if you drop Calc 2 or Math 1014, that's a huge prerequisite for a bunch of second year courses in mechanical engineering. So just be aware of that as well. And the program checklist, it's effective the year that you enter your stream. So let's say you enter Lassonde in 2024 to 2025, and that's your first year. From 2025 to 2026 is when you'd be in your major, and that's when you can basically add or drop the courses within the major stream. And one more thing to add on is that your enrollment date is differing from each year. So a fourth year student would have an earlier enrollment date than a first year student. So you can also find this information. I'll paste a link as well for that, your enrollment date as well. And that should be all the information. But also note that you have to complete mandatory advising sessions and advising training for enrollment on eClass. So this would also be there as well.
Yeah. So once you accept your offer, you would have to go and set up a new student enrollment appointment. And then from there, on the day of your appointment, you would get either an email package or you would go in person and you would have an in-person appointment, depending on whether you set up a virtual or in-person appointment. But once you set up your appointment, then you should get some type of information about what your session is going to look like, what you're going to have to do. So yeah. Okay. Thank you for covering all of that, Rayhan. There are also a couple questions. Sorry, yeah,
I'd
go
like to
ahead.
add one more thing to that. You
Yeah,
can
please
also
do.
look at the Visual Schedule Builder, where I just sent the link. This just visualizes your schedule, makes it a lot easier to select your time blocks and to block out some time. It makes it easy to select labs more than anything. And then you have to then put in the CAT numbers into the registration and enrollment module that Rehan sent.
Perfect. Yeah. It's a very good point, actually, that it doesn't book your classes. It just shows you what they could look like. Thanks for that, Ian. Okay, now there are also a couple questions about the duration of classes in a day, how many classes you might have per day, how much homework or assignments you get. Let's just stick to first year for now. So Ethan, do you want to talk a little bit about how much work you have to do in your first year, especially since first year is pretty generic or is pretty broad for all the programs?
Yeah, everybody will pretty much have a similar first year for the most part. I think only 2 courses are different, 2 or 3. Your first year, you're probably going to have about 8 hours of class. I'd say max a day, but that might include labs and tutorials as well. Homework is based on also the credit of how many courses are, as well as how much time you have to spend. So if you have a 3-credit course versus a 4-credit course, you might have to spend more hours per week studying and doing homework for that class. I'd say overall, it's best to treat your first year almost like a full-time job, almost 40-hour work week. Just allocate around that much time so you can stay up to date with your courses and everything. The best way to think about it is when I was in first year, I had a professor, Andrew Skelton, for math 1013 and 1014. Some of you guys may have him if you enroll. He's a great professor if you guys have the option. He said in university, students usually have the most trouble in their first year because in high school they do the same courses every single day. In university, you might not do that. You might have courses 3 times a week per course, or even once a week per course with a 3-hour session. So you have to be responsible enough to constantly go over the information so it stays relevant in your brain and you're up to date. So whenever you have a homework or a quiz, test, midterm, final, all the information is still there and you don't really have to reteach yourself.
Yeah, it's really good advice. Thanks, Ethan. Okay, so I know we've taken a few questions in the chat, and I see there are more questions in the chat. I do want to ask a couple more questions that I've got written down first before we continue back to the chat. Sorry, back to the Q&A. I keep saying chat, but please put your questions in the Q&A because it keeps it much more organized. I may miss it in the chat. So I have a question for all of you. And I know Ian, you've been a little silent, so I'll go to you first. Have you had, unless you've already talked about it, but have you had kind of like a favorite moment or favorite time at Lassonde? That doesn't have to be in your program or program related. It could be genuinely anything.
Yeah, watching the rocket launch from Florida, probably my favorite moment. Very emotional moment, very great.
That's fair. Honestly, if I send something into space, I would feel the exact same way and I wouldn't be able to stop talking about it. Okay, that's perfectly fair. Kajani, have you had any kind of favorite moments at Lassonde inside or outside of your program?
I would say like the good moments I've had were all club related. So I've been involved in like a few clubs in Lassonde, whether it be like EWB or IEEE and recently Lassonde Motorsports. So like in these clubs, I got to venture out and do a lot of like meet a lot of people, do a lot of different things. In EWB, I set up a meeting with like a member of parliament, and we all met up with him and talked about like our concerns about like Hello 2030. This was like a few years ago during that campaign. And then even in like IEEE, it was like a community of electrical engineers that kind of came together, and we were like, oh, we have no club for ourselves, so we brought back that club, and we're trying to like build it forward to make sure that it stays in Lassonde.
And for those that don't know what EWB and IEEE are, could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So EWB is Engineers Without Borders. I was a part of them in my second year. And so we basically advocate for like campaigns such as like Hello 2030, and advocate for doing engineering for like a greater purpose. IEEE is a huge organization called the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. It's worldwide. You sort of buy a membership. There's people like there's students involved, there's young professionals involved, professors. It's a massive organization where there's like a lot of events, a lot of like cool research things happen, and just ways for you to get involved. And this organization isn't just for electrical engineers. There's like people in computer engineering, software engineering, cybersecurity, a bunch of different streams. They're all involved. Yeah.
Nice. Thanks, Kachi. Chandan, sorry, Chandan, is there anything that you have to say about maybe like what you like about Lassonde or some of your favorite things about Lassonde?
I think I would say like the culture here is really nice. Like everybody is so welcoming. Like if you need any help, like especially the professors as well, like they're so welcoming. If you need any help in your course, you're free to go into their office hours and they are happy to help you. Apart from that, I would say, yeah, and like the clubs around at clubs at Lassonde as well. Like there are different clubs. You could look into like Lassonde Engineering Society. There's like Yorkie Robotics Club, and then I think as Ian said that there's like a CubeSat club as well, like the satellite club. So you can always participate in those. And like one special thing I like about those is like even if you are a first year student, like you could go there and join their club and basically start contributing as soon as you join. So yeah, the culture here is really nice. Lots to learn, make new friends. I would say like if you are joining from fall, try to basically try to attend more events, try to network with the industry people, because there are like a lot of industry events that are happening around at Lassonde. Apart from that, try to ask a lot of questions in your class, try to participate, go to the professor's office hours, and try to basically make connection with your professors. Maybe they could give you like a research position, as Ian was talking about. Yeah, that's all about it.
Cool, nice, thanks. Rayhan, I know I didn't get a chance we haven't heard from you in a while. Do you have any kind of favorite moments from your time at Lassonde? I know you're graduating now, supposed to have a lot of them. Do you have any favorite moments?
Yeah, so one that definitely sticks out to me is definitely the co-op experience that I've had. So I've completed 3 internships at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, denoted as NASA, and I'll be conducting my 4th over the summer. So my first internship was at the NASA Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. So if you were to watch any space movie and you heard the phrase Houston, we have a problem, it's basically the home of manned spaceflight applications. And what I was doing in this role was basically working on the battery testing, designing, destructive evaluation for the spacesuit design, as well as the various Navy missions and Orion capsule battery designs. I then did my second internship at the NASA Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia. So this is more on the aeronautics side of NASA. And I was basically continuing my research on battery, however, for a different electrochemistry, focusing on solid-state batteries for emerging electric aircraft. And over the past summer, I was at the NASA Kennedy Space Center, where I was focusing on plasma physics, which is a bit different than what I was doing previously. And I was fortunate to invent an elemental analyzer for the astronauts who would venture to the surface of Mars. So it's basically an elemental analyzer for in situ resource characterization. I also co-invented rocket fuel that astronauts would harvest lunar materials to basically have their own source of fuel when they're on the steps of the moon. And incoming for the summer, I'll be at the NASA Glenn Research Center in Cleveland, Ohio, focusing on our carbon utilization technology as well as battery manufacturing on Mars. So it's trying to research methods of how we can use the Martian rocks to develop batteries on the surface of Mars for the next batch of astronauts. And I've held a lot of interview preps as well as cover letter reviews and resume reviews for LaSalle students in the past. So there's definitely research out there to help you in that direction as well.
That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Rayhan. Yeah, it's amazing when you get to have so many of those the cool experiences so early in your career too. And I find that sometimes it's even easier to actually get those experiences when you're a university student. That all of these options are still available to you. So it's amazing that you have that. Congratulations, Rayhan. Now, Ethan, I know there's actually a question in the chat about what civil engineering is like. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure, no problem. I'd say I guess I can go through the years quickly. First year, if you're gonna be mixed with a bunch of people that are undeclared. It's like I said, you pretty much have to consider it almost every year close to like a 40-hour full-time job per week. The courses, they pretty much stay the same as well as in terms of how you have to do them. Go to class, review the material. If you don't understand it in class, that's okay. A lot of people don't. Sometimes you have to go through it 2, 3 times for it to start clicking. That's fine, don't worry. But I would always try to allocate time, tests, midterms, just try to stay on top of everything. And if you can do that, you'll be perfectly fine. As long as you're continuing to put effort into all the courses, reviewing stuff periodically, you'll be fine.
Perfect. Thanks, Ethan. We'll take a couple more questions in the chat, and then we'll kind of end it off and share some info about how you can get in touch with us after. So I see some questions about the difference in computer science software and computer engineering, so I can quickly answer that. Computer science and software engineering, I'd say they're actually fairly similar from the technical side. I wouldn't really say that one is a better programmer or coder, more knowledgeable in programming than another. I'd say the key difference is actually the engineering side. So whether you want to just be an engineer, you want to take the engineering courses, you want to do physics, you want to take chemistry, you want to take the extra math, the extra engineering courses, and learn the engineering principles, then become an engineer. So those are the courses that you'll be taking with civil and mechanical and space engineers. If you don't want to do that, if you're not interested in that, then come over to the computer science side. But I'd say that's the key difference. Again, job prospects, I wouldn't say there's much difference. Mitchell and Chanton, feel free to disagree with me or agree. But I'd say they're mostly the same. Computer science does have some theory, for example, like proofs and other theoretical research that engineering doesn't have. Engineering would be more applied. So I'd say that's the main difference, but I wouldn't say job prospects there's really much of a difference. There's a little bit with like the engineering accreditation, but other than that, it's fairly marginal. Mitchell, Chanton, do you have anything to add on to that?
I think in computer engineering, you could look at more hardware courses as well, like working with digital system design or, like digital logic design. I think then there are some electrical engineering courses as well. So that would make some things different. But yeah, overall perspective of the program remains the same. So yeah.
Between CS and software, I'd also like to add that you have a lot more flexibility in the courses that you do get to take. So in engineering, you have more required core courses that you have to take per year. But with computer science, you take a few less courses, but you can also choose more of what you would like to focus on. And you have more freedom with the electives, the optional electives that you get to choose as well. So if that's important to you, then you might favor CS over software engineering.
Perfect, thanks. Now there are some questions about student life at Lassonde. Kajni, I know you talked a little bit about that. Do you want to say a little bit more about that?
Sure thing. So student life at Lassonde, there's just like a lot of opportunities available at Lassonde. whether it be like through clubs or even like Lassonde does hire many students for like work study positions. But just like going into clubs, there's a lot out there, especially for like engineering clubs. We have like Lassonde Student Government. Sorry, not Lassonde Student Government. Lassonde Engineering Society. Then there's like the Robotics Club. Um, there's Lassonde Motorsports. There's like all these different clubs that you can join, and you can join them at different levels. So you could just be like a general
You have to catch
member,
the bus?
or you could be an executive. You could take on an executive position. Lots of these clubs also have events. They have like guest speakers that you can meet and talk with. There's like a lot of cool networking events as well. And even just like hanging around the club space area, you'll meet a lot of cool individuals doing like cool things, and just be able to like venture out of your program. Like as an example, I'm an electrical engineering student, but I joined Lassonde Motorsports just to be more familiar in like the automotive industry. So that's just like something that you can look forward to at Lassonde.
Nice, thanks. And Ian, I know you've done a lot of stuff with social orientation and Frosh, and we only have a few minutes if you wanted to take a quick answer as to social orientation and that kind of that side of student life.
Yeah, sure. So I was a Froshi in 2021 during the just at the end of the pandemic, which was still a great experience because I got to meet a lot of my friends there. And then I was a leader during last year, my second year, my third year. I'm going into my fourth year. And honestly, it's a great experience to see the first years and where they're at and help them out with their career paths, talk to them, just get them interested in the community here at Lassonde. And yeah, honestly, I would highly recommend to anyone going here or really any other university to make sure to do your Frosh. It's a really great experience.
Yeah, also as somebody who did Frosh and social orientation, I highly recommend it. As Shandon mentioned before, everybody's very nice and friendly. Everyone's very open. If you get the chance to visit on campus or just be in person on campus to kind of see what things are like, I would highly recommend it because then you actually get to witness what the atmosphere and what the environment is like overall. Okay, so I see we only have a couple minutes left. So I think I'll ask one question. I see there are a lot of questions in the Q&A. Unfortunately, we won't be able to go through all of them. But at the end of the session, I'll share some ways of how you can get in touch with us in the future, how you can contact us too. You'll be able to talk to all of us either individually or in a group. So don't worry, this won't be the last time you're going to be seeing us. But I think we could do kind of like a rapid fire round. So I'll ask all of you the same question, and maybe get like a minute or like 30 seconds per person. But what advice do you have for all the students in the session who may or will be joining us in engineering or other programs? So Rayhan, I think I'll go to you first.
Yeah, so I think the only downside with engineering and the advice that I'd give in turn of that is that, it is a really demanding course load. And the thing is that, there's a lot of different things that you need to learn in different areas as well. So my recommendation is really manage your time well and learn to build a really strong study habit that works for you, whether this includes a lot of, hours of study in one day or numerous days. Just build an effective method that can keep you ahead of your lectures and not falling behind because trying to stay afloat in engineering is like trying to take a sip from a fire hose. You have to literally sprint to stand still. So that's my advice to all of you.
Yeah, it's definitely a good point. Things aren't going to be super easy, so it's good for everybody to just have an idea of what they're going to get themselves into. Mitchell, do you have any advice?
I would say make sure you stay on top of all your work, especially starting strong is, I think, very important. So in the start of your semester, I would recommend that you take some time to really get caught up on all the requirements that you need for your courses. The syllabus, the outline, start with that and make sure that you do your best on every little thing at the start, whether it be a quiz or a test or whatever it might be. Starting off strong can help set you up for the rest of the semester. So that would be my advice.
Thanks, Mitchell. Chandan, any advice?
I would say like there will be a lot of events that will be happening here and there at Lassand. I would say try to participate in those. And apart from that, there will be a lot of opportunities. I would say like go for them. I in my first year, I used to be very shy, so I didn't used to participate that much. But yeah, I would say like if you guys could just be brave and just take those opportunities, maybe you may never know where they take you. So yeah, and join clubs as well. Try to participate there as well. Maybe you develop some skill here and there, and maybe they could help you get a job too. So yeah.
Thanks. Ethan, any quick advice?
Yeah, Michael basically said what I would recommend. Starting strong is very important. Look through the syllabus, see how the course is built and laid out. Get familiar with it, get familiar with your schedule. Build the schedule for yourself week to week as soon as you can. I'd say from personal experience for the civil department, most courses take full effect with labs and tutorials by the second or third week. So you do have 1 or 2 weeks to figure it all out, but I definitely wouldn't go any later than that. If you get a strong foot forward in your first 2 weeks, then it can basically set you up for the whole semester.
Thanks, Ethan. A lot of good academic advice. Kajani, any tips?
Yeah, sure. So as a commuter student, I would not recommend you running home right after your lectures or labs, which is what I did in my first year. Um, I know it's like really tiring with like a bunch of classes and labs, but university is really what you make out of it. And I've met like a lot of lifelong friends here. And that was mainly through just sticking around after class, really talking to people, talk to people in your classes, make friends, make study groups. Like these are going to be your people for the next 4 years. So it's really good to make those like relationships with one another, talk to upper year students. Lassonde is like this great community. Everyone is willing to help and share advice. So just make the most out of it.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I was thinking the same thing. Ian?
Don't forget to have fun. You're going to burn yourself out if all you do is go to classes, focus on all your work, and spend all of your time doing that. Of course, go to all your classes, do all the work you need to do, but remember to have fun, do the things that you enjoy doing. Don't burn yourself out. It's not fun.
Kajani and Ian took my advice is to enjoy it and have fun and stay on campus and talk to people. Darn. Okay, yeah. At the end of the day, even though you're here to learn, you still want to have a good experience. It's a 4 or 5 year, 6 year degree sometimes, and you don't want to be miserable the entire time. So yeah, I think just try to keep that. That would be my golden advice. Okay, now I know it's 5 o'clock. But we do have one last thing that I'm going to share with you, and this is how to get in touch with us in the future. So it's not the last time you're going to be seeing us. Now, just waiting for the screen to finish loading. But there's going to be a QR code at the top of the screen. If you scan that, that'll send you to the Lassonde community. That's our student Discord. So all the people that you saw here, we're all going to be there. So if you have any questions for us in the future, you come up with anything, you're more than welcome to ask us. There's a general chat where tons of students have been asking questions already. So you could just go there and kind of see their past questions. You can ask any new questions. We're also going to be promoting future events. So we're going to have drop-in sessions and spotlight sessions. So if you happen to be interested in anything else, we're going to be posting them there as well. And we've also got live in-person tours. I'm going to be running them too. And so we're going to be putting more information about that as well. And if you want to listen to more smart people talk about more smart things, we've got a This is Lassonde podcast. So feel free to check that out. But without further ado, thank you again, everybody, for joining us. It is a Friday at 5 p.m., so you can now all go and enjoy your Friday, and hopefully we will see you again virtually or in person sometime in the future. Thanks, everyone. Take care.